Alright, this video is going to show you how to do a maze project. So as a sample to sort of see what one will look like, I'm going to show you a sample one I did. So when I click the green flag, it shows let's play for a few seconds. And then the goal of this is to get through the maze without touching any of the red. So I have to get all the way to where it says finish. And if my sprite, the blue dot, does touch the red, it will bump me right back to the beginning. So as I go through my maze, oh, I hit it too fast. So as I go through the maze, I'm using the arrow keys to control my sprites. Go up and down my columns here. For this one, you're going to be making custom backdrops. You can also make a custom sprite if you want. A lot of the sprites are kind of big, and so if you've got a lot going on your screen, like I do here, it can make it hard to actually have a maze happening. So as I come to the finish, once it touches the yellow finish box, it says you win and you're done. So your project is going to do something very similar to that one. So to start off with, we are going to go to our sprites, or our Scratch projects, and we're going to start a new project. And make sure that you title this one Maze Project. And initially, I want us to go into the stage backdrop area. We are going to make 3 different stage backdrops. So if you hover over each of the options down here, they will turn blue as you go to select them. We want to do the paintbrush one, which is Paint New Backdrop. And it's going to show you these blank screens. And I'm going to use my stylus. You might want to use your mouse if you can. But we are going to need 3 different backdrops. So the first backdrop, I'm going to use the paint bucket, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint mine purple. And I'm then going to use this brush tool to switch to yellow, and I'm going to write directly onto the screen using my stylus. Let's play. You can also type if you want. This icon right there will give you text. And I'm going to give a little bit of instruction. Don't touch the blue boxes. Okay. So that is backdrop 1. Backdrop 2, because you can see your backdrops right here. Backdrop 2 is going to be your maze. So we are going to start off with by making a rectangle. So I'm going to keep my rectangle yellow. You can choose what color rectangle you're doing down here. So choose the color first and then draw your rectangle. I'm going to have my finish up here. So I'm going to draw a rectangle there. And then I'm going to fill it in with yellow, because that's going to be my finish block. And then I'm going to click for the text. I'll click right there. Again, make sure that the color is selected before you start typing. Actually, yeah, keep it red. And I'm going to say finish. If you click off of the box, you can then click and drag it so it's in the middle of the yellow. And now I'm going to make my maze, and I'm going to use my maze, or use either the box or the lines to make my maze. And I'm going to make mine blue. So this time I'm going to use lines. The one you saw earlier was boxes, so it just depends on how you want yours to look, how complicated you want it to be. If as you're doing this you decide, you know what, I don't really like how this one looks, you can always hit this undo button. It works decently well. You can also use the erase button. So I'm going to keep drawing my maze. So now that one I think went a little too high, so I'm going to erase. So you should be drawing your maze right along with me. Now sometimes you might have to keep going back and forth. You might need to look at maybe Google Images for some inspiration. But something along these lines is good. So you have your maze. It may or may not be pretty looking, but you have one. And then we are going to add one more backdrop. So paint new backdrop, click that to get backdrop number 3. And I'm going to paint the background purple again. And then I'm going to use my pen to write "You win." Alright, so we have our 3 backdrops. We see them all sitting right there. And now it's time to talk sprites. So I'm not going to use the cat sprite because the cat sprite is way too big for what I need. So I'm going to right click and delete that cat sprite and go into paint new sprite right there. It's going to give me this window over here where I just am going to make a tiny little dot. And my dot is going to be red. So my sprite is going to be very small. And I'm going to fill it in red. And that is all I'm going to do for my sprite. It's very basic. Alright, so now let's start talking about scripts. So the first thing we want to do is we actually want to do some programming for this, the backdrop. There's not much programming for the backdrop, but since we want the backdrops to change, just like we want to say let's play the maze game, and then have the maze come up, and then have you win, we need to have these backdrops changing. So we are going to start with when the green flag is clicked. And then under looks, we want it to switch, because we need to tell it to switch to backdrop 1, which is our very first one. And then we only want it to sit on that screen for a couple seconds, so we are going to do wait, and I'm actually going to put it 3 seconds. And then I'm going to switch, go back under looks, to backdrop, backdrop 2. So now if we were to hit the green flag and preview it, it will show us that first screen, and then it will switch to our maze. And that's all we do for that little bit of programming. So you see this stage is highlighted because we are programming for that. So now let's click over to the sprite and let's start putting the code in for the sprite. The coding for a maze game is actually surprisingly simple. We are going to start with when the green flag is clicked. So when the green flag is initially clicked for that first time, we actually want to hide that sprite. We want it to go away because we don't want the sprite to show up on the Let's Play screen. Let's go back into events, and then we want to drag over this piece of code. This is going to allow us to start programming for when the backdrop switches to backdrop 2. So go ahead and switch that right there. So now anything that comes after this piece of code will not happen until backdrop 2 comes up. So once backdrop 2 comes up, we want the sprite to show. So if we were to hit the green flag now, we have this screen, our initial screen, for 3 seconds, and then we have the sprite show up wherever it happens to be on the screen. Now we want it to go to a specific spot on the screen. So I'm going to switch to motion, and then I'm going to drag the sprite all the way over to where I want it to start. And what it will do is this go to right here will switch. Those numbers will automatically change based on wherever that sprite is right now. The numbers are also right here. It's telling you exactly where that sprite is. So when it switches to backdrop 2, we want the sprite to end up at x equals negative 221 and y equals positive 156. So now that we know it's over there, we are going to do a forever. And this is where our controls are going to start happening. So in the game, we are going to have it anytime it touches blue to bump back to the beginning. So that means we need to go to do an if then. We're going to do if then. So if under sensing it is touching a color, then we want it to go back to that initial spot. We want it to go back to x equals negative 221 and y equals positive 226. So these two are the same. Because if it is touching the color we set it to, we want it to go back to the beginning. So now to set this color, this little color can actually change. You need to click on that box, and you're going to notice your cursor turns into a hand. And we need to get it on blue. If you're watching that little box, you're going to see that it changes to whatever color it is hovering over on the screen. So I'm going to get it right on the blue, and then I'm going to, oh, I missed it. This is why it might be better if you have actual blocks. Alright, so let's get that blue. Alright, so now I have that box as blue. If you're having trouble with it, just take your time. You can always go back and change it to rectangles instead of those skinny little lines. So that little piece of code will bump us back to start anytime we hit the blue line. Another piece of code we are going to put right next to it will start as soon as the green flag is clicked, and that's going to tell us that whenever your sprite hits that yellow, whenever it touches yellow, we're going to switch to backdrop 3 and show that the player won. So we are using that wait until piece of code from the control section. We're going to use that same touching color. And then we're going to go back under looks and use switch backdrop to backdrop 3. I'm going to tap that square so I get the cursor with the hand, and I'm going to tap the yellow. So now once that cursor, or once the sprite touches that yellow backdrop during the game, it will say that the player won. So the last bit of code that we are going to put into our string here is going to be for controlling the sprite as it moves around the screen. And we're actually going to use the same piece of code, or the same couple of codes, over and over again to do that. So we're going to do it once the first time, and then we're going to duplicate it. So we're going to go under events, and we are going to use when the blank key is pressed. And we are actually going to change it to be up arrow. So when the up arrow key is pressed, we want the sprite to point in a certain direction. And if you click this little drop down, you can type in you can type in a degree, but you can also, they've got a couple that you can just choose. So with up arrow, we want it to go up, which is 0 degrees, and we want it to move. Now you can set this number to be whatever you want. I'm going to leave mine at 10 steps. You can be 1 step, you can be, 20 steps. For this one that we're doing, if your maze looks something like mine, keep it at 10 steps for now, because that's a good gauge. And that's all we need to do. So what we're actually going to do, to copy this code, I want you to use the backpack. That's not something we've used yet before, but if you look down here at the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a little arrow. And when you click it, it's got the title backpack. And what it is it is sort of a place where you can save strings of code to use over and over again. So these are pieces of code that I've made for other projects. And if I wanted to, I could drag the piece of code up, and then it's able to be used. I don't have to reprogram that piece of code. So to add something into your backpack, you click and drag on it to where, then drag it down to be in the backpack, and then let go with your mouse. And then it will show up right there. Now the only thing is you cannot rename these codes. It's like I can't right click on it and name it. So they're all going to be called script. So you have to kind of figure out which script is which based on what you're doing. So now that it's down in my backpack, I can drag a copy of it up. And I'm going to need 4 total copies of it, 1 for each direction. So we've got our up arrow. I'm going to make this one be my down arrow. And when I click on the direction, I'm going to choose down. When I choose this one over here, I'm going to do right. Make this one right. When I choose this one, I'm going to be left. And make this one be left. So these 4 pieces of code, it's only really 12 commands total, are going to control your sprite for the entire game. So as a review here, we have this piece of code right here, which will have the sprite show up on our screen at our start point, which is x equals -221, y equals +156. And then whenever it touches something blue, it's going to bump back to that part on the screen that we've deemed our start spot. This piece of code over here is saying that when the sprite eventually touches yellow, to switch to backdrop 3, which is our you win backdrop. And then each of these pieces of code here are going to control our sprite around the screen. So now when we go to click the green flag and hit start, we should be able to play our game. So I'm going to hit the green flag. I've got let's play, don't touch the blue boxes. And now I'm going to use my keys, my down arrow, my up arrow, my left arrow, my right arrow, to test it out. It's good to make sure that your sprite can actually fit through all of the parts of your maze. I'm going to hit a blue line just to make sure, and once I hit the blue line, jump right back up to start. So now let's go all the way through the game. I keep moving my sprite through the game, trying not to touch any of the blue lines. I like using 10 steps, or for the move 10 steps, because it does move you along at a pretty good rate. But it also gives you some good control so that it makes it easier for you to not hit the blue lines or whatever color lines yours are. So now, once I'm very close to the yellow, I know I'm about to finish, so once my sprite hits the yellow, it should switch to backdrop 3 and say you win, which it does. Now the one other piece we could do is you see my sprite is still there. If we want that sprite to completely disappear, we are going to go to looks. We are going to go to hide, and we are going to put that right there. So now the next time we run that piece of this game, that sprite should disappear from the backdrop, and we shouldn't see it on backdrop 3. So now your assignment is going to be to make your own maze. You can make it as complicated or as basic as you want. All of the requirements for your maze are going to be in your OneNote. One thing that I am going to ask you guys to do is to play with sound and include sound in your maze somehow. It can be on your backdrop 1, it can be on the maze itself, it can be on backdrop 3 when you win, but I want us to explore the sound spot a little bit as well. It's the one piece of code that we haven't really played with too much. So look on OneNote for your instructions and upload your game link to On Campus once you're finished.